Hail, weary traveler, and welcome to the second episode of our series on mead. We have more episodes incoming at a regular pace, so keep those peepers peeled for that content. So you may be pondering to yourself, I feel like I've heard about mead before, but I don't know why. What is this drink? And why are history buffs always squawking about it? Well, cuddle up, because I'm going to tell you a bedtime story about the history of mead, so get tucked in and warm that glass of milk. We began long, long ago, when mankind first discovered alcohol, and lo and behold, it was mead. Likely uncovered in a rotten stump filled with rainwater and bee gibbets, this accidental slurry was drank and recreated back in the hut. The first documented mead is referred to in China around 9000 BC, and while this may have been the first reference, it is likely that different parts of the world discovered the brew around the same time. Egypt, Greece, India, Mayan culture, Scandinavia, you name it, mead was drank there. And while it was likely widespread, literature or documents on mead are hard to come across. Mead started getting mythological, and soon the Greeks and Proto-Germanic cultures were incorporating it into high storytelling, being both the nectar of the gods and the draught of poetry and wisdom incarnate. This drinking of mead was very popular until the rise of the Roman Empire, where during their campaigns they would conquer lands and then make vineyards for wine production. Shortly after, wine usurped mead as the drink of the people, being easier to make in bulk due to the fact that grapes don't try to sting you to death like bees will. This conversation of booze and the convergence of preference can directly be tied to the expansion of the Roman Empire and their successful wars over the tribes of Europe. While this happened in most of Europe, in Scandinavia, mead held on and continued to be a drink of choice for a long time until the trade routes opened up around 1200 and grains started moving en masse. Around the same time as Catholicism spread, beer was becoming popular as well, when the use of hops as preservatives were monopolized by tiny little monk men. This was the nail in the coffin for mead to a degree, as the ease and availability of beer replaced wine as the proletariat's choice, while mead was adopted by the aristocracy, being that honey was tithed, and herbed and spiced meads gained favor in the noble courts. During these turbulent times, mead was likely brewed very dry, as honey was hard to come by, and probably tasted sour due to the use of wild yeasts. Back then, standard brewing practice was throwing the whole hive, bees and all, into a water-filled pot over an open flame, meaning that old meads likely had a lot of insect parts and more delectable nibblins. It probably ranged anywhere from 2 to 13%, but more likely on the lower end of that spectrum until, like I said, the aristocracy was able to push the alcohol thresholds higher, having more honey to play around with. In Scandinavian tradition, this mead was shared in large quantities, as the belief was that when drinking mead together, your weird and orlog are being intertwined with each other, which will have effects on you throughout all of your subsequent lives. This ancient sour honey wine was not only responsible for likely friendships, but also likely rivalries and killings, being used as a feast drink in both peacetime and wartime. It was used as a sacrifice to gods, and also as inspiration to many poets. It was used as a medicine to some, and to others as a way out. No matter how far back you go, mead has been there, hand in hand with humanity. Bees and humans are a lifelong kinship, and subsequently, mead travels with them throughout their journeys in a little flask on the hip. Now, in our day and age, mead is growing in popularity once more, rebirthed like our ancestors in Valhalla. Mead makers are one a dozen now, and beekeeping practices of the modern world have made all the ancient complications of the old days no more. And time will only tell who will hold dominion over this deeply historical beverage. In a future episode, we will talk more about where mead is now. While that was a quick and dirty overview of mead, there are plenty of other dusty old geezers who could go into more detail on the nitty-gritty of this beverage history. This episode serves to give you background for all of the future episodes of ours as we continue the series. If all this interests you, then I encourage you to scour all the resources available to you. It gets way more wild, just like the medieval ragers our relatives used to bang the drums to. Now keep posted for the next episode, and until then, see ya.